Hi, welcome to today's presentation, Making a PDF Workflow Work for You. This webinar is brought to you by J.S. McCarthy Printers, and my name is Sean Anderson. I'll be your presenter today. I'm the tech support rep here at J.S. McCarthy, so part of my job is to meet with customers and help them set up a PDF workflow. We're going to start with an outline of what we're going to talk about today. First of all, we're going to define what is a PDF workflow, when you should use a PDF workflow and when you shouldn't, how to create press-ready PDFs, how to check your PDFs for problems using the built-in tools in Acrobat, and finally, how to send your PDFs to us for printing. The first definition we need to talk about is what a source file workflow is. That's the traditional workflow that most of you have been using. It happens when you send your QuarkXPress or your InDesign document along with all the fonts and links that are used in that document over to us for printing. The workflow we're going to concentrate on today is a PDF-based workflow. That's when instead of sending those source files, you send us just PDFs that are properly created from your layout program. Then we load those PDFs directly up into our workflow system and print from those. And then finally, the third type is a combination workflow, where some customers, especially when they're first starting out, will send both source files and print-ready PDFs. We use the PDFs if possible, but if we need to, we can go back to the source files to make additional changes. Next, we're going to talk about the advantages and the disadvantages of a PDF workflow, why you might want to use one and why you might not want to. The first advantage, to the printer at least, is that it's faster. It requires a lot less prep time for us to process a PDF file than it does with source files. Next, it's more reliable. So properly created PDFs are self-contained. That means that there's less chance for font issues with the files or for missing graphics. PDF files are also smaller, so it's much quicker to send them electronically, and it requires fewer resources on this end to process. And finally, as a printer, we use PDFs as a bridge format for non-design programs. Programs like Word or Publisher that really don't work very well for transmitting information for commercial printing. In a lot of cases, you can make those work much better by making a PDF out of them. And then finally, the big reason is that PDFs are less expensive. The combination of being faster and more reliable and smaller means that it takes less resources in prepress for us to process your files. That means that your prepress charges are reduced because they're based on an hourly rate, so that leads to a lower cost to you. First of all, yes, PDFs are a lot less expensive. So as a designer, most of these advantages you're going to see are the same ones that they are to us. They're faster to process, they're more reliable. One important thing is they give you more control over your files. Since you're making the final file that we're going to be printing from, you get to see exactly what that's going to look like. And PDFs can also help to reduce or, in some cases, entirely eliminate AA charges when you make corrections. We're going to break that out and go into that in more detail a little bit later on. Now, one real-world example of PDF workflow is a catalog customer that we have. That original catalog was hundreds of pages and it contained thousands of images, and they'd done it in Quark on the PC. In a source file workflow, that file took 29 hours in prepress from start to finish, and it took over 40 gigabytes worth of files that had to be sent in on a portable hard drive. We worked with them and we switched them to a PDF file workflow. That PDF only took 3 hours in prepress from start to finish. And because PDFs were a lot smaller, it was only 500 megabytes worth of files, and that was small enough to send electronically, so it was much quicker for them to get their files to us. That combination, again, made it much less expensive for us to work on their job. We were able to lower our quote, lower their prices. And one thing that can't be emphasized enough is it also reduced our turnaround time. That gave them a lot more time to work on the files and have a more up-to-date catalog. So we not only saved time and money in printing, we were also able to give them more lead time to create the files and to allow them to put more up-to-date listings in that catalog. Let's take a look at the workflow steps in a source file workflow and compare them to a PDF workflow. Starting from where the design is done, the designer is going to check them and preflight them to make sure that everything is okay. They're going to gather the fonts and images together, package them or collect them for output to make sure that everything that we need is in that package. Then they're going to transfer those files over to prepress. In prepress, we're going to load up all of the customer fonts, relink all of the images, and then we're going to do a preflight and fix any issues that we find. Finally, we're going to create a PDF, and then we're going to process that PDF through our Printergy workflow and use that to print a proof. and then we send that proof back to the designer, and the designer checks that proof to make sure that everything is okay. So from start to finish in this workflow, we've got 10 steps. We really want to try and make the workflow more efficient. So we're going to take a look at the steps in the workflow to see where we find the most problems. We really want to try and make the workflow more efficient. So we're going to take a look at the steps in the workflow to see where we find the most problems. And if you take a close look at it, you're going to see that the part where you have to gather the fonts and images, and then where we have to load up the customer fonts and relink the images on our end, that's really the part of the workflow that takes the most time, and that's the least efficient. Having to go through and load up all of those fonts leads to all sorts of problems on our end. Font management is a mess. Now, in a source file workflow, we have to try and have you gather all of those fonts together and send them to us, and then we try and reproduce the exact font setup on our end that you were using when the file was created. This is a major headache, and it's very, very difficult to get all of those fonts together. If you take a look at this example here, I'm showing you a bunch of fonts that we've gathered from a couple of font folders. I've got 5 different versions of just plain Helvetica on here. I've got one true type for the PC. I've got PostScript Type 1. I've got PostScript Type 1, a different version. I've got 0.001, 0.006, and I've got 0.002, 0.000. I've got a true type version for the Mac. I've got a defont version. If I scroll down here a little bit more, I'm going to find a Helvetica Medium. That's an open type version. There's all of these different versions and all of these different types of fonts. And in a lot of cases, it's difficult to get exactly the right ones loaded up and sent over to us. And having all of those combinations leads to a situation where things can be a little bit tricky because you never really know what's going to happen. You can load up one set of fonts on your end and it can look fine, and we can load up those same exact set of fonts on our end, and one minor difference in the computer setup or the OS or any number of thousands of factors can lead those fonts to load up differently. So anything you can do to remove the font portion of sending files to us really streamlines the workflow. So if the key is efficiency, let's see what happens in a PDF workflow when we remove the 2 most inefficient steps, gathering fonts and gathering images from the process. In the PDF workflow, the designer checks the files and preflights them, just like in the source file workflow, creates a PDF, does a preflight and fixes any issues on that PDF, transfers the files to us. On our end, we check those PDF files instead of source files, and then process those directly through our Printg workflow and print out a proof. And finally, the designer checks those proofs. So in this workflow, we've made a couple of minor changes. First of all, the designer, instead of packaging the files and fonts and images together, is just creating a PDF. And then we've added one additional step, and that's just to check that PDF to make sure that nothing happened during the PDF creation process. On the prepress side of things, we've removed 3 steps, including 2 of the most time-consuming ones, loading up the fonts and loading up the images. So having fewer steps in prepress makes less expensive, faster, more reliable jobs. And again, the key here is the efficiency. It's most efficient for you as the designer to make and check the PDF because you're working with your fonts on your end, and you're creating the PDF with those same fonts, so there's no font transfer mess. There's no relinking of images because those images are all optimized and embedded in that PDF. And as the designer, you're more familiar with the job than anyone else, so you know what to look out for if something changes during that PDF creation process. Now, one of the big differences between a source file workflow and a PDF workflow is AA charges, or author's alterations. It's much more efficient to use PDFs in this case. PDFs are a lot more difficult to edit on our end, so if you do have changes that need to be made in a PDF workflow, generally it's best for you to go into the source files, or for the designer to go into those source files, make all of the changes, and then send up a new PDF. Now, AAs are a lot less expensive because making these types of changes in a PDF workflow requires fewer steps in prepress. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so let's take a look at a source file workflow and see how AAs work in that situation. First of all, the client's going to go in and find the corrections or typos or changes that need to be made. Then they're going to indicate those corrections to prepress. In prepress, we're going to open up the files and fix those issues. Then we're going to create new PDFs, process those through our Printg workflow. Then we're going to check the PDFs that we've created and processed to make sure that the corrections are made properly. And we're going to go ahead and create a proof. Then we're going to send that proof over to you. Then the customer or the designer is going to take a look at those proofs, make sure that they're okay, and then they're going to give approval or they're going to request more corrections. And in many cases, they have to go in and make those same corrections on their local files to make sure that what you have on your end matches what we have on our end. So there's 11 steps total here, and there's 6 steps that are involved in prepress. And in printing and prepress, any time that we spend on your jobs has to be accounted for. So anything that we can do to reduce the amount of time spent making these changes saves you money. Let's take a look at how a PDF file workflow would work with AAs. So with a PDF workflow, there are a few less steps involved when it comes to making AAs. From the customer standpoint, you're going to go in and find the corrections and make the corrections yourself on your own source files, and then create a new PDF of all of the changed pages, and you're going to check those out to make sure they're okay, and then send them off to prepress. We're going to receive those files in prepress, and we're going to process that PDF through our Printers workflow, and we're going to replace that page in our imposition. And in most cases, we would just request an inside approval on that PDF since it's something that you've already seen, and I'll be talking a little bit more about the Insight remote proofing system later on. And then you're going to receive that inside approval on your side, check those proofs and make sure that they're okay, and then you're going to give approval or make more corrections. So in prepress, we've reduced the number of steps from 6 down to 3, and it takes way less time to replace a page in an imposition, so that means that there's lower costs to you, and you get to see the changes and proof them on your end before they're sent over to us so you know that they're correct. And there's much less chance for a miscommunication in this case because you're making the changes that you found yourself. And finally, you as the designer always have the most current files on hand. So the big differences are that a PDF workflow, the designer makes changes and sends new PDFs just of the pages that have issues. And because the designer is more familiar with those issues, they're able to make those changes more efficiently. At J.S. McCarthy, we replace just the problem pages of the file, and that's much quicker to process than the traditional way. And less time to make the corrections equals less money. Fewer steps involved either reduces or in some cases can entirely eliminate AA charges. Now that we've talked about the advantages of a PDF workflow, let's cover the disadvantages. Now it is important to know that PDFs are not easy to edit, and that limits the changes that a printer can make to your file. Also, some technical problems can only be solved in the source files. Finally, the designer has to take a little bit more responsibility when creating files that are going to go into a PDF workflow to make sure that the integrity of the file is good and there aren't any issues with it that would need to be handled at the printer's end. So all of these issues mean that there are some good reasons and some bad reasons to avoid a PDF workflow. Let's take a look at the good reasons to avoid PDFs. First of all, a bad source file is going to make a bad PDF. Any sort of problems that you have in there are going to get transferred into the PDF. And since those PDFs are much harder to edit, that can make processing and fixing issues on the job more difficult. So if you don't have a clean source file, you're probably better off sticking with a standard source file workflow. In many types of specialty printing and packaging situations, PDFs don't work as well either. Because they're so specialized, there's some final setup that needs to be done by the printer. So in those cases, you're better off sending source files. If the printer is required to make a lot of last-minute changes and edits before press, you're probably better off avoiding PDFs since they're much harder to edit than source files. And then the last situation that's a good reason to avoid a PDF workflow is that if the printer needs to do color correction, the self-contained PDFs are a little bit more difficult to edit than the individual linked images that are attached to most source files. And if you work this way with a PDF, you don't really want to end up where the PDF has different color images in it than your original linked image files. That can really lead to a lot of workflow confusion, so you want to avoid that situation. Now let's talk about some bad reasons that we've heard to avoid a PDF workflow. A lot of times I hear from people that they don't know how to make a PDF, so they don't want to bother with it, or they're too scared that they're going to mess something up. And that's really what my job here at J.S. McCarthy Tech Support is. I can walk you right through the process. I'm going to be showing you a little bit more later on how easy it is, and I can check your work and make sure that you get all of the correct settings that you need to make a clean PDF. In our case, all of our settings are posted right up on our website along with instruction files, so we make it as easy as possible for you to do. Second reason I hear not to make PDFs is that some people think that it's more work, and you'll see that it's actually less work to create a press-ready PDF than it is to properly gather and send to source files. Now, wrapping up the overall workflow part of this presentation, in the real world, we had one customer last year who saved over $60,000 on their printing by going to a PDF workflow. Now, every job is a little bit different, and your mileage may vary on this, so I can't promise that everyone's going to save that kind of money. But if you're interested in adopting a PDF workflow, contact your CSR or sales rep when doing your next estimate and let them know, and they'll be able to take a look at your job and give you a better idea of what kind of savings you could see with PDFs. Now let's talk about some of the ways that you'd create a clean or press-ready PDF, one that's suitable for printing in a high-end workflow. The first thing you need to know is that not all PDFs are created equally. There are a lot of different ways of creating PDFs, and there are a lot of different settings that you can use, and PDFs aren't all necessarily made just for commercial printing. So you want to be careful to make sure that you're choosing the correct settings for the type of PDF that you're creating. And if you don't know, ask your printer. Again, we've got all of our settings posted right up on our website. I'd be more than happy to walk anyone through that process. So make sure that, first of all, you're choosing the correct settings to make the correct type of PDF. And the method that you use to create the PDF matters. There are many different ways of creating a PDF that don't really work well for commercial printing. The export filters that are built into a lot of different design programs don't necessarily create a good, clean, print-ready PDF. Also, on the Windows side, some third-party drivers don't work very well. There are a lot of free programs out there or low-cost programs that use the print driver method that just don't create a clean, press-ready PDF. A little bit later, I'll be talking about some of those print drivers that do work. And finally, on the Mac, if you're using OS X, avoid using the built-in PDF creation features. Those really don't create a print-ready PDF. Some of the different accepted settings that are available at JSM are our own house settings, the JSM JPEG PDF 7. That's what you download from our website. And that really works the best for our workflow, so that's the one that we strongly recommend everyone uses. And that's going to be an Acrobat 6 format. All of the fonts are embedded in it, and it preserves layers and transparency. We also accept certain versions of the pdfX standard, and that's an industry standard for printing. That only allows information in the PDF that's appropriate for advertising and commercial printing. Let's talk about the two pdfX standards that we accept here. The most common one out there is the pdfX1A. That was set up by magazines. It's very common in magazine advertising. It is accepted at JSM, but it's not ideal because it does flatten the transparency in the file. And with our workflow, it works best to have unflattened transparency. You'll notice that this version of PDF will only allow CMYK or spot colors, and it won't allow you to have anything in the file that is multimedia, JavaScript, any of the other things that you can put in PDF. That's completely disallowed in the pdfX formats. And also it ensures that all fonts and images are properly embedded. Another common PDF standard that we do accept at JS McCarthy is the pdfX4. That's a brand new standard setting that was just ratified, and it's available in CS4. It's basically an updated version of X1A. It has all the same requirements as X1A, except it will allow you to use lab or RGB color if it's properly tagged with an ICC profile. And it does use Acrobat 5 format, so it allows live transparency. And that is accepted here at JS McCarthy. It is a little bit better than X1A because of the live transparency, but overall our settings are very close to the pdfX4 setting, except our settings don't allow tagged RGB. So it's a little bit better for you to use ours. So here are a couple of tips to remember when creating a press-ready PDF. Make sure to use either Acrobat Distiller or export directly out of Adobe Creative Suite. Make sure to use your printer's preferred PDF settings. Avoid the smallest setting or Adobe's standard or press settings. The smallest setting is for on-screen use only. It makes very small files, but to do that, it downsamples the images to 72 dpi, and it doesn't always embed the fonts. The Adobe standard setting or press setting aren't necessarily compatible with most presses. The standard setting is going to downsample all of your images to 150 dpi, and it'll convert all your color into RGB. The press quality setting can convert color improperly, and it can include unnecessary prepress tags, such as OPI. At JS McCarthy, you can always find our PDF settings on our website. Go to www.jsmccarthy.com. Click on the Prepress tab, and then click on PDFs. The page contains our job options and is divided up into sections for most of the common prepress programs out there. So if you're going to create a clean press-ready PDF out of the Adobe Creative Suite programs, InDesign, Illustrator, or Photoshop, All of those programs are going to use the same setting as Acrobat Distiller. You can download those job options right from our website and then add them to your PDF presets. And once you've done that, in any of those programs to create the PDF, you just select our settings from the PDF presets that are available. Now I'm going to do a short demo and show you how that would work in InDesign. To create PDFs out of the Adobe Creative Suite, and in this case specifically InDesign, the first thing that you need to do is to go to our website and download the correct PDF job options. You can get to them by going to www.jsmccarthy.com/pdf.asp. Once you get there, if you scroll down, you'll see that there's a section detailing information and instructions on how you can create PDFs out of Adobe InDesign, as well as the job options. In this case, the job options are exactly the same for InDesign and the rest of the Creative Suite. So if you install them in one place, they'll get installed on the others. Now switch to InDesign and go into the Adobe PDF presets under the File menu and choose Define. Now click on the Load button. Navigate to where you saved the job options that you just downloaded, select them, and click Open. That's going to load those job options into this menu. Now click on the Done button. And to create your PDF, all you need to do is go into the File menu, choose Adobe PDF Presets, and then pick the job option that you just downloaded. That's going to give you a window where you can save the file that you're going to be creating and name it. And then that's going to open up this first window. And from here, you can change the number of pages that you want to output. In some cases, you might want to do that. But in other cases, in most cases, you'll probably just want to leave this window alone. So if you do want to export individual pages, select that from here. Otherwise, click on All, and then click on the Export button. And that's it. That's going to go ahead and generate a PDF for you. Once it's done, you can go into the Finder, find the file, and open it up. And then check it out to make sure that everything is okay. It's as easy as that. Now let's talk about QuarkXPress. In Quark, you're better off exporting into PostScript and using Acrobat Distiller to make the PDF. Quark does ship with a built-in PDF export filter, but it doesn't consistently make a great PDF. So we really don't like to have you use that, although if you don't have Acrobat Distiller, it is possible to use it and get okay results in many cases. It's important with Quark to remember that the later point updates within a series or a version of Quark generally make better PDFs than earlier ones. So if you're running Quark 6, you're better off updating all the way up to the free 6.5 update. The same goes for 7, update to 7.5. You'll find that you get a little bit better results when you're working with PDFs if you do that. Now you can download export settings for Quark 7 and 8 directly from our website. Unfortunately, Quark 6 needs to be set up manually, but I do have PDFs that show you how to do that right on the website as well. And then the next step after downloading the Quark settings is to download the Acrobat settings. If you haven't already, go ahead and download the JSM job options and install those in Distiller. And then go into Quark and change the Quark preferences to export PostScript instead of generating a PDF. And then to make a PDF, you go into the File menu and choose Export PDF and pick the J.S. McCarthy settings. That'll generate a PostScript file instead of a PDF. Then you open that PS file in Distiller and convert that using the JSM settings. Let's go ahead and take a look at a demo of that. The first thing to do if you're creating PDFs out of QuarkXPress is to go to our website and download the appropriate settings. The first thing you'll want to download are the job options. You can find those near the top of the window. There are job options that are available for Acrobat version 4 through 9. Go ahead and download the version that's appropriate for you and save it to your desktop or some other location that you can easily get to. Then scroll down to the Quark section. If you're exporting PDFs out of Quark 6, you'll need to manually change your settings each time. This PDF will help you with that. But if you're exporting out of Quark 7 or 8, you can go ahead and download those export settings and load them up directly in the program. Go ahead and do that now. Now switch back into QuarkXPress. Go into Preferences. And under the PDF Workflow section of Preferences, change that from Direct to PDF into Create PostScript for later distilling. It's also handy to switch your virtual memory on this from the default of 100 up to a larger amount. We're going to go ahead and choose 1000. If you start creating more complicated PDFs, it helps to give Quark a little bit more memory to work with. Now go ahead and click on OK. You'll get a warning that you can ignore. Now go into Edit, Output Styles, and we're going to go ahead and import the output styles that we just downloaded. Click on the Import button, navigate to where you saved the JSM settings, and go ahead and open them. That will add them to the Output Styles menu. Now go ahead and save your changes. Now, to create a PDF out of Quark, go into the File menu, choose Export, Layout as PDF, and in this case it's really a misnomer. You're not going to be exporting directly into PDF. You're going to make a PostScript file that you're later going to turn into a PDF. You can choose the location where you'd like to save that, and you can name it something that you can remember. And at the bottom of this window, it's unfortunately a bug in Quark that it always goes back to captured settings. You have to manually go down and choose the settings that you want to use each time. So we're going to go ahead and pick the JSM High JPEG setting. And we're going to go ahead and save our file. Now we're going to go and switch to the Finder. And we're going to find the PostScript file that we just created. We need to open that up in Acrobat Distiller, but before we can open it, we need to make sure that we have the correct job options loaded there. Let's go ahead and open that up. And if you don't already have the JSM High JPEG setting loaded here, go ahead and go into the Settings menu and choose Add Adobe PDF Settings. Then navigate to where you left that setting file, at Job Options, and go ahead and click on Open. That'll load it up in the Adobe PDF settings. Now, to convert your PostScript file to a PDF, go ahead and just drag that file right onto the Acrobat Distiller window. It'll take a few seconds to make a PDF, and then when it's done, you can go ahead and open that up. And that's it. It's as easy as that to make a PDF out of QuarkXPress. And now we're going to talk about how to get PDFs out of programs that aren't really made to make PDFs. We do receive a lot of jobs that are done in non-publishing programs like Microsoft Word or Microsoft Publisher. And the PDF format is really handy for getting information out of those programs and avoiding issues that would normally occur with type rewrap or other problems that can happen. Because the PDF locks that content in place, it allows us to work on those files in a stable environment. I don't know if you've ever worked with Word, but moving a Word document from one computer to another can cause the fonts to completely reflow. And if you've designed something in a program like that, that really is a problem. So an easy way to get PDFs out of any Windows program is to use a little print driver called QPDF. And that may not have a lot of relevance to some people if you're not working in these programs. But if you ever accept small space ads, we found that about 20% of the ads we get for publication end up being created in programs like Word or Publisher. So this is something that you can easily give to other customers and walk other people through doing to get you what you would need to work with if you're placing a PDF into InDesign or QuarkXPress. Now the process of using this is really straightforward. All you need to do is to download and install a print driver, and then to create a press-ready PDF, you choose QPDF as the printer. And that's it. We're going to go ahead and have a demo of that right now. The first thing that you need to do if you're going to use QPDF on Windows is to install the print drivers. If you go to our website in the PDF section, at the very bottom of the page, you'll see that we have instructions for how to install them, as well as links to the QPDF drivers. Go ahead and download those and save them someplace where you can find them. There's also a link on here for the QPDF homepage that you can go to if you want to read a little bit more about it and download the drivers directly from there. Once you've downloaded those drivers, they'll come in as an exe file. Double-click on it to install. Accept the license agreement. And there you go. If you've never installed QPDF before, it may also ask you to install the free Ghost Script drivers, and it'll do that automatically for you. That's the internal engine that QPDF uses to print PostScript into PDF. Once you've installed the QPDF writer, you'll see that will show up under your printers list as a separate printer. Now to make a PDF out of any program, all you need to do is go into that program, choose File and Print, and then choose the QPDF writer from the list. Now click on OK. And that'll open up a window where you choose the location that you want to save the file in and pick a file name. Then click on Save. And that's it. Now we'll take and open up the file in Acrobat. And here you go. We've got a press-ready PDF. So now we've talked about some ways that you can create clean PDFs. Let's talk about how you can proof them. Now once a PDF is created for press, it's still important to check it to make sure nothing has happened during the PDF creation process. If you really want to do a good job of proofing a PDF, you do have to have the full version of Acrobat Professional to preflight and check it. Some of the third-party viewers that are out there, like Foxit Reader or Apple's Preview, really aren't acceptable for proofing PDFs. You're not really going to see what's in all print-ready PDFs correctly in those programs. Also, Adobe Reader and Acrobat Standard are of limited use for proofing. You can take a look at things in there, but you can't necessarily change them or get as in-depth as we'd like you to be able to. If you are using any of those Adobe programs, always make sure to turn on Overprint Preview. That's in Acrobat under Preferences and Page Display. If you don't have Overprint Preview turned on, you're not going to accurately see what's going to print when you look at things on screen. That means that your trapping is not going to look correct. If you have any cases where yellow and blue ink, for instance, are overlapping and set to overprint, you'd see either yellow or blue there. You wouldn't see the green that you'd get normally by mixing those two inks. So it's very important to turn that on. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the features that you can use in Acrobat for proofing things. We're going to check out the output preview so you can see how you can check separations. We're going to check your file for RGB and other types of incorrect color spaces, and we're going to show you how you can use Color Convert to change that into the correct CMYK color space. We're going to check fonts, and then we're going to show you how the Preflight features work. So when checking PDF proofs in a print environment, the best tool to use is Adobe Acrobat. Now you can use Adobe Acrobat Standard or Adobe Reader to preview your PDFs and just visually look at the files. But if you have the full version of Adobe Acrobat Professional, you can also automatically preflight the PDF to look for potential issues. Now one problem that occurs with all versions of Acrobat is that as Adobe ships it, they have the Overprint Preview turned off. And let's take a look to see what that means. We've got our InDesign document open here, and we've got two different elements on the page. We've got a yellow box overlapping or overprinting a blue circle, and where those two elements are meeting, we have a green shape. At the top of our page, we have a tan spot color box, and we have blue type going on top of that. Now when that gets put on press, that's going to need some trapping to account for misregistration on press to make sure that no white shows in between the blue type and the box underneath it. And normally when that trapping gets applied, it puts a small overprinting line on the element. Let's go ahead and take a look to see what happens in Adobe Acrobat after we've processed our PDF. Okay, so that doesn't look so good. If we zoom in on the bottom, you can see that our green element is missing. It looks just like our yellow box is overlapping and knocking out the blue circle in the background. And if we go up to the top a little bit and zoom in, you can see that our type is really broken up. If we go a little bit closer, you're going to see that it looks like there's a beige line going around the outside of all of the type. And that's the trapping that get applied to it. What's happening here is a display issue. Because Adobe Acrobat is shipping with Overprint Preview turned off, you're not accurately seeing how the inks overprint on press. So let's go ahead and go into our preferences and fix that. Go into Acrobat Preferences in General, and then go into the Page Display section, and right here we've got Use Overprint Preview. By default, that's only turned on for PDFX files. And we're going to go ahead and change that to Always Show Overprint Preview. That's really the best setting to have in a pre-press or design environment. Now if we click on OK, things look much better. You can see that this matches pretty much with what we were seeing in InDesign. Our yellow box is now correctly overprinting that blue circle, and you're seeing the green shape where those inks are mixing. And up at the top, we can now read our type, and you can see that it looks much better. You get a little bit of an overlap on here if you zoom in really closely where you can see where the trapping is happening, and that's proper. That's the way that you'd want that. So changing this setting makes your files look much, much better, and you can now accurately see and proof how this job will print on press. Even without using Preflight, Acrobat has a lot of nice features for checking your PDFs. The first thing that you might want to check is to go into your File menu and choose Properties. That'll give you a short description about the PDF and how it was created. It'll show the application that was used as well as the method that was used to create the PDF. If you look on here and you find this file was done in a non-standard design program like Microsoft Word, or that it was produced with a non-Adobe PDF producer, that could be a clue to you that there could be some problems with this. You might need to look out for RGB or low-res images, or that you might need to look out for missing fonts. And in this file here, if we click on the Fonts tab, we're going to see that there is a problem. First of all, the Helvetica font is properly embedded as a subset, and that'll print fine, but the second font used in this file, Sathu, has not been embedded. There's no embedded or embedded subset next to the name. And so you can see this is not loaded up on this machine, the Sathu font, so it's actually using the Adobe Sans MM font. And that means that this is not going to appear in the PDF as it did in the original design program. And that could cause some problems when printing. So whenever you see this sort of thing, the best thing for you to do is to go back into the original design program and recreate the PDF and make sure that the font is embedded. One of the most powerful tools for proofing within Acrobat is the Output Preview. You can get to that by going into Advanced, Print Production, and choosing Output Preview. Now at its most basic, this window can be used to check the separations in the file. So you can see here we've got 4 color separations, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, as well as 2 spot plates. And if I uncheck the checkbox next to the spot plate, we can see that that element disappears. So you can use this to check to see how files are separating. And here we've got a problem where we have 2 different reds, and we may not really want that in the final printed file. In a little bit I'll show you how you can fix that. Also, if we turn the blacks on and off, we can see that we have some black elements that aren't disappearing. The We Deliver text on the page is not disappearing when I remove the black plate. And that's a sign that that's printing on more than just the black plate. If I move my mouse over any element on here, it'll give me the percentage of inks that are used. As I move that over that We Deliver text, we can see that that's using 600% of the total ink coverage. It's at 100% of all the plates. So we can see here that that type was accidentally set up in the registration color instead of solid black. And now as I move this around here in different parts, you can see the exact CMYK percentage of the other parts of the image. So at its most basic, you can use that tool to check your separations and your ink percentages. So that's the basics of the Output Preview, but there are also a few hidden features on here that a lot of people aren't really aware of. There's a Show menu up here, and right now that's set to Show All. But this can be customized to show just spot colors, and now we can see our 2 spot color reds, as well as registration, which is considered another spot color in this case. And this can be set to show RGB elements only. So from here we can see that there might be an issue because this image is in RGB. Or we can have it show just items that are set in the registration color. And here we can see again our registration color text We Deliver that we're going to want to fix a little bit later on. So by going into this Show submenu, you can really choose how you want to view the file, and you can have it highlight just potential problems that you want to try and look for to fix. There are also some sections on here where you can go in and look for specific color warnings. You can have it show you any overprinting elements. In this case, there isn't any overprinting on that file. And you can have it highlight rich black, which is going to highlight our registration color. And finally, if you go into the Object Inspector, you can click on individual elements and have it tell you a little bit of information about them. So here we clicked on this image, and we can see that this is a low-res image. Its resolution is 98.15 pixels, and that's a sign that that image could print with a lower quality than we'd really like to see. So the Output Preview is really much more powerful than most people know about. By selecting the different elements on here, you can find out a lot more about your file than just the separations. So the basic editing tools in Acrobat are very powerful, and they allow you to manually check for issues in your PDFs. But Acrobat Professional has something that's even better for automatically checking for issues, and that's the Preflight functions. The first thing you need to do to use the Preflight functions is to download the correct Preflight profiles from our website. Go to jsmccarthy.com and under Prepress select PDFs. And then scroll down on that page and you'll see that there's some JSM PDF Preflight profiles that are available from there. Go ahead and download those profiles and save them someplace where you'll be able to get to them later. Then switch into Acrobat and go into Advanced, Print Production, Preflight. The Preflight window will load up, and in that window you can load a new profile by going into Options, Import Preflight Profile, navigate to the profile that you downloaded, and then select it and choose Open, and that will add it into Acrobat. And we have several Preflight profiles that we've saved, one here for CMYK only, one for both CMYK and spot colors, and one for spot colors only. So you can choose the Preflight profile that matches the type of job that you're trying to print. So to use a Preflight profile in Acrobat, all you need to do is to select it and then go to Analyze down here at the bottom. And that's going to go ahead and check the file against all of the different issues that we programmed that profile to look for. So in this case, the profile comes back and it's telling us a bunch of different issues. Here it's highlighting the issue we found earlier with registration color. Next, it's telling us that there's a spot color used inside the trim in two places. If we tick this open, it'll tell us that there are several elements that are set in either Pantone 185 here or in a spot red. And if you want to see where that element is, you can select it and choose Show and Snap, and it will show you in the Snap view over here the element in question. In this case, it's showing us the line down here. If you want to see that a little bit more clearly, you can also double-click on the element, and it will highlight it. So we can see that this red line is actually set in a spot color. The same thing goes for the type. This exclamation point is in a spot color. If we double-click on it here, it'll highlight it in the file. So this Preflight will show you where the problems are, and it will help you find exactly where they are in your PDF file, so you can go in and fix them. And if we continue going down the list, we'll see that there are issues with RGB. And that's showing us this image that we found earlier was an RGB. And there are issues with resolution on that same image. So most likely this file was set up with a low-res FPO in place. We'd like to see a resolution of at least 300 dpi. But if you don't have access to a higher resolution image, we can print it at the lower res. It just doesn't look quite as good. Now once you have these issues discovered, you can go ahead and create a report that gets saved with the file. We can save this wherever we'd like. And it will highlight all of the issues that it finds in that PDF. And now if we take a look at this, you can see that there's a summary page that shows you all of the errors that it found. And then if you go to the next page, it will highlight all of those errors in the file. And we can go ahead and tick open our layers over here, and then we can show just the problems where there are spot colors in use, where there's an RGB, where the resolution is too low, or transparency is used. And in our workflow, transparency use is okay, so this is just set as a warning. So that's something that you can save and then send off someplace to let someone else know of the issues that you found with this particular PDF. Now that's the way that you can check a single file to look out for issues. Acrobat also has built-in tools that allow you to save Preflight droplets. And droplets will let you do multiple files at once. If you go into Options and choose Create Preflight Droplet, it'll pop open a window that lets you choose the profile you want to check with. You can choose what happens when something succeeds or fails. In this case, you're going to move the PDF file into one place, one folder. You're going to move it into an error folder if it doesn't succeed. And you can have it create a report, just like I showed you a second ago. And then you click on the error folder to pick the folder that you want to use for failures, and the success folder to pick the folder you want it to use for successes. Well, we've already got one of these droplets saved, so let's go ahead and cancel out of this, and let's see how that would work. So we've got several files here. We're going to go ahead and select a couple of them. And we're just going to drag them right into the droplet that we saved earlier. That's going to open the files up in Acrobat, and it will open up a small run list with each of the files indicated on it, and it will tell you what it finds as it goes through to process them. So you can see a red X indicates that the file failed, and a green check mark indicates that it succeeded. When it's done, it's going to go ahead and create a report for you, and open that up in Acrobat. And it's going to summarize all of the issues that it found. So it's telling you that 3 of these 4 files failed, and 1 of them succeeded. And then if I click at the name of the file up at the top, it'll take me to the summary for that file. So I can see exactly what the issues are. And now if I click on Open, it will take me into the actual summary here, so I can read it a little bit more closely. You can go back, find the original files that have problems, and go ahead and fix them. You see it moved all of these into the failure folder, and it saved a report for each one, and I can go ahead and open that report up to see the specific issues for that particular file. So that's how you can save a Preflight droplet and run through many PDFs at once to look for issues. And all of our profiles are available on our website, so you can go ahead and download those and try them out. And if you do find that they need to be changed a little bit for your own specific needs, you're welcome to go ahead and do that. You can do that by clicking on the name of the profile under Imported Profiles, and click on Edit, and then you can set the settings on here as you need for your own uses. So that's it. You can use a Preflight droplet for making changes or making checks on several files at once. You can customize that to look for issues, and in many cases fix those issues as well. There are PDF fix-ups on here that are available to convert to CMYK, to embed fonts, to do all sorts of changes to the files that you might need in a normal production environment. And if you have any questions about setting up Preflight profiles, please feel free to contact me. So now we've used Preflight and Output Preview to find issues with our file. Let's go ahead and take a look at how we can fix them. The easiest way to fix something in a PDF is first just to go into the source files if you have them and fix them there, and then generate a new PDF. But if you don't have access to the source files, you can use some of the tools in Acrobat. The first tool that we're going to use is under Advanced Editing, and we're going to pick the Touch Up Text tool. We're going to use this to fix the registration color issue that we found earlier with the We Deliver type at the bottom of our window here. We're going to go ahead and select that type, and then if we right-click on top of that and choose Properties, that'll give us some information about the font that was used here. Now we're going to go ahead and click on Color, and we're going to use a little trick here. We're going to convert this color from the original profile that was saved in the file into just straight black and white. We'll go ahead and pick black and white as an option on here and click on Convert Colors. Now if we close this off and then go back into our print production and output preview and turn the black plate on and off, we'll see that that type has now switched from registration color, showing up on all 4 plates, into just straight black. So that takes care of that. Now the next thing that we need to do is to go in and use the color convert features to fix our spot colors and fix our RGB. We'll find that under Print Production and Convert Colors. We're going to do this in 2 steps. For the first step, we're going to go in and set this up to search for, you can use this to search for specific objects, or in this case we're going to search for just specific elements. We're going to look for color types. We're going to pick any RGB, and that'll limit it to only edit RGB items. We're going to go here under Conversion Profile, and we're going to change this profile into the JSM coded G7. And then finally, under Convert Options, we're going to check the checkbox for Preserve Black. What that does is it takes a look at the RGB values, and if it finds any value that has equal amounts of red, green, or blue, which would make either a neutral white, a neutral gray, or a neutral black, it will convert those over to go only on the black plate in CMYK. If you don't have this checked, you can end up with your grays in RGB turning into 4-color CMYK. And in many cases, that's not what you want to have happen. So it's a good idea to have that checked. So now we're going to go ahead and click on OK. And it's going to give us a warning that this can't be undone. We're going to just go ahead and click through that. And now if we go in and check our output preview again, and have it look for RGB elements, we can see that nothing shows up. So we've now converted that image, that picture that we were looking at earlier, from RGB into CMYK. And if we select that on here, we can see that the color space is now set to CMYK. So that takes care of that issue. Now the final issue that we may want to fix on this is that we have two separate spot colors in use. And we're going to fix that using the same tool. We're going to go into Convert Colors. And the last time we did this, the only objects that were affected were RGB because we'd selected that under our color type. This time we're going to leave that set to choose any color space. We're going to go under Ink Manager. This Ink Manager will list all of the inks or colors that are available in the file. And we've got a couple of options for dealing with our spot colors here. We can either go in and convert them into process by clicking on the little icon next to the name, or by clicking on this checkbox to convert all spots to process at the bottom. Or we can map one spot red into the other, and that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to combine these two spot color plates into one. We'll select the spot red at the bottom, and we're going to change that using the ink alias into Pantone 185. And now we'll hit OK, and OK again. And now if we take a look under our output preview, we can see that the second spot color has disappeared, and now both of these elements are now set up in Pantone 185. So that's how you can use the color convert features in Acrobat to fix RGB, incorrect registration color, and to combine spot colors. So now we've shown you how you can find many issues in Acrobat by checking the PDF Preflight. Now let's talk about a lot of the common mistakes that we do see. The biggest one is that we see a PDF that gets created with the wrong job option settings. And the way that we can tell is in a lot of cases that'll come in without bleed or the proper crop marks in place. It'll come in with all of the art converted into RGB or an incorrect color space. All of the images get downsampled to low res. The fonts are not embedded properly. And the PDF may include extra or incorrect info like OPI tags, Java, color profiles, or multimedia. So it is very important that you choose the correct PDF setting when you're saving your PDF files to avoid any of these issues. We also find in some cases the PDF comes in created at the wrong size. If you use the settings that I've saved for you and set up on our website, those are always going to be defaulting to 100%. But in some cases, if you use the print drivers, it's possible to have that set to reduce to fit. And if you include the crop marks and bleed area on there, it makes your actual PDF file a little bit smaller than the page size that it's supposed to be printing at. So be careful about that and make sure that your PDFs are created with the correct settings. And finally, occasionally we'll get PDFs that are created as reader spreads. They may be okay in the original file, but when the PDF is created, the checkbox for spreads is turned on, and that really causes some difficulties on our end because we have to break those PDFs up into individual pages to properly impose them. So it is important on your end that you do use the correct settings for making those PDFs, and all of these issues can be avoided just by using those. So let's talk a little bit about how you can upload those PDFs to us. We've got a couple of different ways. You can send them through regular FTP, or in some cases people will email smaller ones. Because generally the PDFs are a lot smaller than the source file, they're much easier to upload through the internet. But PDFs also make it possible for you to do a special type of workflow called an auto process workflow. That lets you see an immediate electronic proof of your files. That can lead to reduced turnaround times. It can avoid some possible AA charges, and it can really make the workflow go much more quickly on your job. Let's take a quick look at how that would work. To do an auto process to upload, first you have to be set up with an account on our remote proofing system. Go to remoteproof.jsmccarthy.com and enter in your username and password. That will take you into your main job homepage. From there you can click on the job that you want to upload the files into, or you can create a new one. Let's click on a job that we've already created. From there, click on the Upload Files button. That'll open up this Upload Files window. There's a section at the top where you can type up the name of the upload. You can enter in notes. And there's a section where you can choose the type of processing that you want to have happen. In this case, we're going to go ahead and choose the default of allowing spot colors to remain and overprinting all black inks. This menu can be set up and customized depending on your individual needs. Now we're going to go ahead and find the files that we want to upload. We've got 3 PDFs that we're going to upload. We're just going to drag those right over onto this window in the section that says Drag Your Files Here. And then we're going to click on the Upload button. And that'll take a few seconds for it to process, and it's going to go ahead and upload those files to our server. Then when it's done, it's going to open up this processing window. It's going to take a few minutes again to do that. You're going to notice in just a second that once these files process, it's going to give you some information about them. It'll do a short pre-flight of them, and it'll let you know if it finds any problems with any of the files that have been uploaded. And you can see in this case we've got a couple of issues that have shown up on here. First of all, these files had been uploaded once before, so it's giving you a triangle with an exclamation point as a warning to tell you that those files are being automatically replaced. Next, we have 2 red X's telling you that the input file has an error. We can see that this input file has RGB images inside of it, and this file has a font that did not embed properly. And finally, this last file has a low-resolution image inside of it, and we can see that that's 98 dpi, when we prefer something much higher, usually around 300 dpi. So let's go ahead and close this window. And now let's take a look at the pages in the Pages view. And you can see here that the 3 pages have processed, and we have a small thumbnail preview of the page that's okay. The other 2 pages, since they didn't process properly, have a red X. So the system will do a little bit of a pre-flight to let you know that there are issues with the files, and it'll show you whether they process properly or not. If you want to go ahead and check out the files further, you can click either on the name or on the thumbnail view, and you can open up the Smart Review. And in the Smart Review, it will show you more about the file. You can find out the separations that are used, the exact size. You can use the eyedropper tool to check to see what the exact color is underneath any given point. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can do all sorts of things to check your files. And this is a really handy place to look out for issues. So once you've gone through that Smart Review, if you see that everything is okay, then you can leave that page alone. But if you find that there are errors, like in these other 2, then you can go back and immediately re-upload them. So I've got some replacement files that I've fixed here for those 2. I'm going to drag these back over. I'm going to make sure that I use the same processing plan. And you have to make sure that the files have the same exact number of pages as the original upload and the exact same name. And if that's the case, then these new files that I'm uploading are going to automatically replace the files that were there previously. And we'll see after just a few seconds that it's going to go ahead and process. And this time we're going to just have a couple of warnings telling us that these 2 pages were overwritten and that one of the files does have low res. Now if we go back and take a look at the files in the Pages window, we can see that all 3 of these files have processed correctly. And if we open those pages up in the Smart Review, we can now check each of those pages out and make sure that they're all okay. So by using this process, you can avoid incurring any sorts of AA charges, because if you find a mistake, you find an error in your file after you've uploaded it, you just go back to your original source files, make the changes, generate a new PDF, and then re-upload it. And because we don't have to make any changes to the files or work on them, we don't charge you anything for that time. So let's take a look at the steps that you follow in an auto process workflow. First of all, you'd end up creating the PDFs on your end. You'd upload those PDFs and choose a processing plan, and then you check the details for any processing issues like low res, RGB, or missing fonts. You proof those pages online using the Pages view or the Smart Review. If you find problems, you re-upload those pages with issues. Since we haven't started working on the files and you're fixing those files before we do anything on them, there are absolutely no AA charges involved in this. And then finally, you can give approval right online as well. If no paper proofs are required, that's all we need. We get those files in, we get the notices that they've been uploaded, and we check the files to make sure that they're okay. And if you do want to have paper proofs, then we can create those. That's optional. And you can go ahead and check those and give approval on those paper proofs as well. But if you don't want to go to a paper proof workflow, you can do that right digitally from the file that you see online. And again, fewer steps in prepress takes us less time. So this is a lower cost for you, and it tends to reduce the turnaround time on these jobs as well by quite a bit. So if that's something you're interested in, you can contact me, your CSR or your sales rep. And that wraps up our presentation today. I hope it's been helpful to you. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me through email at techsupport@jsmccarthy.com or by calling 207-622-6241, extension 361. Thank you very much.